the Bhagavad Gita. The portion that we are going to take in these 4 days is called Sthita Prajna, which literally means the profile of a perfect person. And these 19 verses appear in the last portion of the 2nd chapter. Before we get into the verses themselves, what we need to understand is, why is it that we are studying the Bhagavad Gita now in the 21st millennium, when we're all looking forward to new technologies, we're looking forward to going ahead? Why is it that we're going back to a text that was written 5,000 years ago? What is its relevance in our life today? What we need to understand is that the Bhagavad Gita helps us to tap our potential. Most of us don't know what we're worth. We don't know what we're capable of. As you can see here on the slide, this blue portion is what is 5% of our potential we tap. The best among us tap 5% and we consider ourselves successful. That's an irony. The Bhagavad Gita introduces us to the balance 95%, the untapped potential. You don't have to acquire any more knowledge. You don't have to do anything with yourself except understand your potential, understand yourself, understand the deeper layers of your personality from which you can tap greater energy levels, greater sense of motivation, inspiration. Today, wherever you go, you find one commodity that is in great short supply is inspiration. There are talented people, there are educated people, there are people who have all the pluses in life except inspiration. Where are we going to get that inspiration from? Only from within. And the Gita introduces us to this. The language of the Gita as a text is ancient. It's 5,000 years old. But it is ultra modern in its message. The language may be obsolete. It's originally written in Sanskrit, which nobody speaks nowadays. Yet its contents are contemporary. It is a science, the science of human perfection. And one has to treat it as a science. The Gita physically appears in the middle of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is an epic of almost 1 lakh verses. And the Bhagavad Gita portion appears right in the center of it. It is as if it's a pendant on a necklace. The Mahabharata is the necklace and the Gita is the pendant. It is Adi Shankaracharya who extricated it from the voluminous Mahabharata literature and gave it a status of its own, which it richly deserves. The stories of the Mahabharata, this voluminous literature, contribute to the philosophy of the Gita. It compares the wick with the Gita. The light is the knowledge that comes out of the Gita, and the Mahabharata stories are the oil that feed the wick. Another verse in this invocation compares, see, the knowledge of the Gita came from the Upanishads. The Upanishads, which appeared in the last portion of the Vedas, are the source of the knowledge of the Gita. So, the verse which will be chanted just now gives a picture of the relationship between the Upanishads and the Gita. Sarvopanishado gavo Dogdha gopalanandanaha Partho vatsa sudhir bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. The verse says that the cow can be compared to the Upanishad. See, the cow gives milk. Rich, wholesome, universal food that is taken by people of all races, all communities, all ages, by the sick, the healthy, sports people, people in hospital. The milk is a universal food for humanity. Similarly, the knowledge of the Gita, the knowledge embedded in the Upanishads, is a universal knowledge. It's not meant only for Hindus or Indians. It's meant for any human being, anywhere in the world, at any period of time. It has a universal appeal. So, the cow eats dry grass and water, and it has this unique ability to convert grass, which you and I cannot eat, into wholesome milk that is a universal food. And this is the uniqueness of the great rishis, our ancestors, who converted. What they did is they extracted the knowledge from everyday experiences. Those everyday experiences are available to you and me. But you and I don't have this technology of being able to convert the everyday experiences and cull knowledge out of it, which the cow has. The cow converts grass to milk. Similarly, the great rishis, the sages, converted everyday experiences into this great knowledge. And what happened to this knowledge? Krishna was the milkman who milked the cow, milked the Upanishads, and presented the crux of this knowledge to Arjuna, who is the calf. The milk is the nectar of the Gita. Who consumes milk? Not the calf, unfortunately. Who consumes milk? You and me. Similarly, the knowledge of the Gita was actually, Arjuna was instrumental in the knowledge being given out. But who are the people who benefit from this knowledge? Sudhihi means wise people. All of you here in Fiki Auditorium in Delhi. You are the privileged few who have access to this great knowledge. So, the background of the Gita is an external dramatization of what is happening inside each one of us. What does it portray? The Mahabharata is a war between the 5 Pandavas, virtuous, good people, and the 100 Kauravas, vicious, negative people. This battle was not fought 5,000 years ago in Kurukshetra, which is supposed to be 80 miles from here, right? This battle is being waged in the bosom of each one of us. Every one of us, this battle is being waged. Right now, here in the year 2003. And this battle is between the positive forces within us and the negative forces within us. The battle raging between spirit and flesh. The battle raging between our own positive tendencies. There's something in us which pulls us towards the higher, towards the positive, towards goodness and virtue. And these positive tendencies are very few, like the Pandavas were only 5. The negative tendencies in us are very many. Sensual tendencies, indulgent tendencies, negative tendencies. Yet, in this battle of life, the challenges that we are faced with within, we can gain mastery, we can gain victory, just as the Pandavas gained victory. How? By surrendering to Krishna. The Pandavas surrendered to Krishna. Surrendering to Krishna doesn't mean go and worship an idol outside. Krishna represents Atman, the life-giving force in each one of us, the most precious aspect of each one of us. And if our positive tendencies, if we surrender to the Atman in us, we will be more than capable of fighting and overcoming the negative tendencies within us. The problem is we are succumbing to the negativities. Everybody has negativities. Everyone has faults. But what differentiates a successful person from the multitudes is the capacity to marginalize your own faults, set aside your own negativities, and deploy your positive forces to achieve the higher, to achieve something that you would be proud of when you leave this world. Every one of us has to leave the world. That is a certainty. But when we leave the world, how do we leave the world? Do we leave the world a slightly better person? Do we leave the world having contributed something to the world? Or do we leave the world in a manner which everybody says, thank God he's gone? That's the question. So, the other thing is, Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. And he married Gandhari, who could see. She was not blind. But when Gandhari married Dhritarashtra, you all know this story, she blinded herself. And for the rest of her life, she was blind. What it represents is, Dhritarashtra represents the mind within us. The mind, the realm of emotions, of loves and hates, of passion, of likes and dislikes. This realm is blind. Even in English you say love is blind, right? And then what happens is, the intellect, Gandhari represents the intellect. When the intellect is overwhelmed by the mind, the intellect which can see, which can discriminate, which can distinguish, which can lead you to the higher, the better, also gets blinded. And the product, the outcome of this unholy marriage of a blind mind and a blinded intellect is what happened with Dhritarashtra. 100 Kauravas. 100 vicious things come out of such a person. You create unrest, you create negativity in the world. See, not only do you destroy yourself, but you destroy the world also. You have no right to do that. You have no right to either destroy yourself or the world. So, what is of great importance, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita focuses on, is the mind in you is blind by nature. But why are you blinding your intellect also? That wonderful instrument, the intellect, which is God's gift to humanity. No other creature, no other species in the world has been blessed with that intellect. And that intellect which can see, you unnecessarily blind it by getting obsessed with the mind, by getting infatuated with the mind and its whims and fancies. All you have to do is retain the intellect's independence, and then you'll be able to handle the mind, handle the blind mind. When a sighted person gets into partnership with a blind person, the person with sight, it's the responsibility of the person with sight to lead the blind person through life. But if the sighted person also gets blinded, it's a tragedy. That's what's happening to us. If a dog or a lion is not able to handle itself, it's understandable, it doesn't have an intellect. But you and I, blessed with this intellect, if we behave like animals, it's atrocious. And the Gita focuses on this. So the important question now is, who am I and how do I handle myself? You and I consist of the body, and the body's function is to perceive and act. The body is your outer personality. Within the body are two instruments called the mind and the intellect. The mind is the realm of emotions, feelings, that which is blind, as we've just seen. And the intellect, which is the realm of discrimination and judgment. Beyond the body, mind and intellect, which are matter, inert, is the spirit, that which enlivens you, lends life to you. So these are the four components in us. Let's take an example to understand our inner personality, Today we're in the realm of computers. The monitor can be compared to the body, the software to the mind and intellect. What is the most important aspect when in the running of computer? Power is the most important aspect. So what is most important in the running of a computer is what you call as UPS, right? Uninterrupted power supply. Similarly, friends, the most important aspect of our personality is the spirit. Minus the spirit, you become junk. How do you know that? See, each one of us are suffering from a phenomenon called transferred epithet. You transfer the magnificence, the divinity, the beauty of your spirit to the body, and you believe the body is all important. Yes, the body is magnificent, beautiful, but what lends beauty to the body is Atman, spirit. And you unnecessarily go yesterday, came across two young girls who were discussing. One person has, what is that? Transparent nail polish. The other one has glitter and stars. And I didn't know you could have stars in nail polish. That was an education for me. But this obsession with the body comes because you believe the body per se is beautiful, magnificent. It's not the body that's beautiful. It's the spirit that's beautiful. How do you know that? However beautiful a person, however loved a person is, the moment he or she dies, what happens? Even a person who is dearest to that individual, what do? Cremate the body as quickly as possible. You don't want to leave it for a minute longer than necessary. So what we're saying is, the body, mind in the body by itself is junk. It is the spirit, Atman, that lends value to the junk. You don't understand that. So what we need now is UBS. What is UBS? Uninterrupted Brahman supply. All over the world there's a great shortage of Brahman. So just as when you don't have electricity, you have UPS, uninterrupted power supply. What you need is uninterrupted Brahman supply. The question is, how are you going to get it? Brahman is a Sanskrit word for spirit, God. Let's examine the individual a little further. Your body acts, but the action of the body can be driven by either the mind or the intellect. Take any action and you ask yourself, why am I doing it? You come to the conclusion, either because I like to do it, or it could be, I don't like to do it, but my intellect, my buddhi tells me that it's the right thing for me to do. It's exam time right now, right, in Delhi. So a student says, I don't like to study. I have yet to come across a student who likes to study. But then he studies. Why? Because in spite of the fact that he doesn't like to study, his intellect tells him, I better study if I want an assured future. Now the question is, whenever the mind comes into play in your actions, it clouds the issue. The simplest of things get clouded by the mind when the emotion comes into play. The most complex situation gets cleared when the intellect comes into play. And this has been beautifully brought out by Shakespeare in the play Romeo and Juliet. You know the story of it. In Romeo and Juliet, the famous balcony scene where Romeo and Juliet, as you all know, belong to warring families, inimical families, and they fell in love. So they spend the whole night together and in secret. And towards dawn, when Romeo hears the lark is a morning bird, he tells Juliet, he says, see, I heard the lark, I better go, otherwise I'll be dead. His intellect is functioning, clear. Juliet is still under the cloud of emotion, and she makes a deadly statement. It is the nightingale and not the lark. Now what you need to understand is, you may not know the difference between a nightingale and a lark, but she knew the difference. She knew what a nightingale sounded like, she knew what a lark sounded like. But when she was overwhelmed with emotion, even positive emotion, love, judgment falters. Fortunately for us, Romeo sticks by his stand. He says, no, it is the lark, and he leaves. Now this is what is happening to all of us. The intellect functions perfectly until emotion comes into play. And then the simplest of issues become a problem. There's confusion, there's delusion, there's all kinds of things that go on in the mind. The mind always opts for what is known as instant pleasure. Anything that gives you pleasure here and now, the mind grabs instant pleasure. It is the intellect which has the capacity to settle for what is known as deferred gratification. Short-term pain for long-term gain. So therefore, what we say is that the intellect is your password to success. Just as when you're operating the computer, if you have the password, you have access to the knowledge. If you don't have the password, what flashes on your screen is access denied. It's the same thing that happens within our personality. Every one of us has enough and more knowledge to operate, to work in our respective fields. The problem that arises is, at the crucial moment when you need the knowledge, the mind plays up. Because of anxiety, you want to achieve the result, you want success, you want to come out with flying colors. And that anxiety in itself prevents you from accessing the knowledge, prevents you from operating at your best. What happened to the Indian team in the World Cup finals is exactly that. It's not as if suddenly they lost all their expertise and skills. What happened? They wanted to win so badly. The mind played up. Access denied flashed. And as a result, they lost. So this happens to all of us. It happens to a student who goes in for the exam. It happens to a job aspirant who goes for an interview. It happens to captains of industry who are at crucial meetings. It happens to heads of state who are negotiating vital issues. It happens to every one of us. And therefore the knowledge of the Gita is important. All of us are chasing knowledge. Today we're in the age of knowledge capital. All of us are looking for more knowledge. You don't need more knowledge. What you need is the capability to handle the knowledge that you already have. And this is what is given by the Gita, by strengthening your intellect. Mind is like a virus in a computer. The intellect is like antivirus software. So you have to, just as when you buy a computer, you buy it with antivirus software installed in it. The point that the Gita makes is, you're born with a supercomputer already within you. Don't you think you need antivirus software? And that's the intellect. Especially when the virus is also embedded from birth. Now, these four aspects of your personality, the body, mind, intellect and spirit, have a hierarchy. The body is the lowest aspect of your personality, then the higher is the mind, then the intellect, and the highest, most potent aspect of your personality is the spirit. Now as you go up the ladder, your happiness increases, the power that you experience increases, you become more successful, stress reduces, and you achieve your potential. So let's take one example, happiness. If you're operating at the body level, you are happy, say for instance, suppose I offer you a chocolate. You are happy only when you eat that chocolate. So the happiness that you derive out of that chocolate is very, very limited, because you are happy only as long as the contact of the chocolate is there with your tongue.